Come to the Party, a meditation delivered by Dr. Rob Blackburn, Reverend Luke Lingle, and Reverend Julie Wilburn Peeler on March 30th, 2014 at Central United Methodist Church in Asheville, North Carolina.
You may be new to Central and you haven't heard that during these days we call Lent, so we're on this journey together. We're going to be looking every Sunday at the prodigal son. You say, whoa, that's a lot of Sundays, one story, but I think we believe this is our master story. This is the gospel in a parable. I've had several of you tell me over the last couple of weeks that you've already found yourself in the story, and I hope by the time we're finished today, we'll definitely have found God there. So we were looking at this parable, and it was a disciple Bible study. We were looking at Luke 15. You know how it goes, lost sheep, lost coin, lost son. So we've been talking about the prodigal son. We got to the end of this, and there was a man in the group, middle-aged man. I'd really enjoyed having him in the group. He was new to the church, hadn't even yet been baptized. So he would read something, hear something, and he would ask really intriguing questions. And so we got to the end of the story, and he said, tell you the truth, I'm not sure I really like the story. Okay, yeah. He said, I'm a little bothered by it. I said, well, what? What about it? He said, well, it just doesn't seem all that morally responsible. I said, what part? He said, well, you know, all this welcome home party at the end. Okay, let the boy come home, but put him out in the bunkhouse with the workers, and let's see if he can prove that it's the real deal. So here's a man, he understands. This is talking about God, and he's a little bit bothered by it.
So what'd you do, Rob? I mean, this wasn't the first time you'd taught this parable. You'd preached sermons about it. You taught other people, but this guy was shocked. He was. It's not the normal reaction that we have, and so I guess my question is twofold. Is one, how did that make you feel to have someone react like that? Because most folks have heard this story before. And then secondly, I mean, what did you say? How did you respond to this shock of this man?
First of all, I think I was kind of glad to have somebody being in a Bible study and be bothered by something. I thought that was good. And then the part I really liked, I think he helped all of us in the group realize we've lost the shock value of this story. It has all the bland predictability of a biblical theme party. Oh, there's a little story, the prodigal son over there. Yes, we know how that comes out. And oh, we know the part, that really bad part in the beginning, where the boy just says those terrible words to his father. Drop dead, Dad, I want your stuff, I want your money. Don't want anything to do with you. Just give me the inheritance now. We hear that and we're unruffled because we can already hear the festivity and the music and the merriment at the end of the story. Fear not, right? Every time I've ever read the story, the boy comes home, right? Okay? Boy's going to come home. He's going to turn around and get things right, and then Dad's going to make things right for him. So what we have is this predictable morality play. Once the boy gets out of the muck and the mire and he starts headed home, it's like then the plot is locked in place. And the father is obliged like a cuckoo clock to come out at the right time with the party hats. The boy's remorseful, yes. And he seems to be really, really sincere, yes. And so isn't he due a celebration, right? You see what happens? We're so overly familiar with the story. We don't see how shocking and surprising the parable was. I have to hand it to the man in the disciple group. He may not have yet understood grace, but he knew excess and extravagance when he saw it. He knew this is taking us into the realm of the unexpected and the undeserved. We've got to be honest about this story, folks. This does not play out in a predictable way. Oh, some of it is. The boy's headed home. He's trying to get it right. He memorizes this well-rehearsed speech he's going to give to Dad when he gets home. Father, Dad, Father, yes, Father, I'm not even worthy to be called your son. Just treat me as one of the hired hands. And then at this point, we expect the father to be gracious, but not overly so. Okay. Homecomings for prodigals are fine The prodigal's dressed in sackcloth and ashes. But come on, patent leather dancing shoes, tuxedos? No, here's the way we expect it to be played out. The boy gives his well-rehearsed speech, and the father says, yeah, we're glad you're home, Howard. You know, it is about time. And why don't we do away with the earring? And it's about time that you start taking a little bit of responsibility. Go on in the house, get your warm meal. Then why don't you come back out and you and I'll spend a little time finishing your college application. Right, Howard? Yeah.
That's how we would predict the story to come out if we were the first hearers. But the interesting thing about our parables, we have to remember the context. So the context of this parable helps us think about it as something that is less predictable than it is for us today. So Jesus begins this story in response to a group of Pharisees saying to him, "Why are you sitting with these people? Why are you eating with those people?" And they don't expect the story that Jesus tells. Yeah, maybe they've heard of a son and maybe they've heard him come, but the way he tells the story, the unpredictable nature of the response of the Father, they didn't expect this. We have to take ourselves back to that context. I mean, for so many of us, like Rob said, we hear the story, and when we hear the boys wants and stuff, we already hear the band playing. In the context, the Pharisees, they didn't know what was coming next. They were wondering what Jesus would say and what that meant for him and what that said about God.
Okay, so taking your words there, let's change the context. Just try to imagine that you haven't heard this story before. Here's what you know at this point. You know the boy, he just told the dad to get lost. Go on, drop dead. Want your stuff, your money, but not you. So he goes off and he's doing his own thing and makes a big mess of it. You can't blame the government, can't blame the system, can't blame the school, can't blame his family, can't blame the church. It's all on him, you know. He's made a mess. Okay, so now he's coming home. And this is what he gets. Hey, the father's been waiting on the porch. You get the feeling the father's been there a long time. He's always out there looking, hoping. And he sees the boy coming around the edge of the tennis court. He doesn't sit there on the porch crossing his arms like, well, let's see what the boy's going to come up with. No, he goes running toward the boy. I mean, pell-mell like a maniac. And before the boy can hardly finish his speech, the dad almost knocks him down with the whiskers and the laughter and just the tears of his welcome. Look, the boy's back home, that's all that matters. And the father doesn't do right here what most fathers have typically done through the years. He doesn't say, I told you so. Hope you've learned your lesson. Doesn't say it's about time. He says the boy was lost. Now he's found. And we're going to have some kind of party. On a Wednesday evening? Yes, on a Wednesday evening. Listen to what he says. He said, roll back the carpet. Ring up all the neighbors that you can reach. We're going to have a hoedown. Call the house band. Tell them to tune up the fiddle and the banjo. And get every grill we got and crank it up and get the best meats out of the freezer. We're going to have a party. I don't mean one of those little pretend parties. This is going to be a really good party. We're not going to have those little hors d'oeuvres. You know those little triangle cucumber sandwiches? We're not going to put a little olive on a Ritz cracker and call it a party. It's going to be the real thing, real food, veal cutlet, prime rib. We're not going to have a little stereo sounding like Muzak. We're going to have a house band, live music, and there's going to be dance until the sun comes up. On a Wednesday evening? Yeah, on a Wednesday evening.
There's nothing normal about this father's reaction. I don't know about you guys, but had I gone home like this, that I would not have had a party thrown for me. It would have been a little different. But that's the difference in this story. Jesus tells us about this extraordinary grace. It's this extravagant love that God, the Father, shows to this Son. I was thinking about it this week, and it reminded me of our Methodist roots. John Wesley talked about grace constantly. And one of the ways he talked about grace as this unmerited love of God that infuses our world and moves in and out of our lives in ways that we cannot even comprehend. This story, there is nothing normal about the Father's reaction. And in fact, it is extraordinary. It's extravagant. It is more grace and love than we can ever imagine.
You're right, Luke, and I think that's why Walter Brueggemann was right when he said the most interesting character in this story is not either one of the boys. It's the father. I mean, that's the real prodigal in the story. Talk about excessive. He was more excessive than the younger boy in his loose living. He was so excessive in his desire to have what we have here today, a family, that he says he's going to beg us all to come to the party. Do you think anyone here could really make a case that the son, or that you, me, are due this kind of celebration? I don't think so. Look, it's not our remorse that obliges God to set the table. It's not our desire to set things right that leads God to, fry up the fatted lamb and calf. This is grace, folks. Throw away your calculator, your spiritual math collapses. 1 + 1 equals more than 2, it equals 3, maybe 3,000. You get more than you ever deserved. And that's where Jesus is taking us in this story, to an event so unexpected, so undeserved, so out of joint with what life should bring us, that all we can do is really kind of fall down before the joyful mystery of it. Now, the good news is the man that was bothered by the kind of astonishing grace of this story was eventually bothered by grace enough to be baptized. And I think he, in his own way, found that he was blessed by this unmerited love. Aren't we all? We're here, right? I mean, anybody want to make a case that we earned our way here today, living, breathing in an amazing universe? And then when you and I choose something other than God's kind of life, well, then we could be left with our failures, our stack of IOUs. And then Jesus, the one who told this story coming from God, tore up the whole stack in one fell swoop so you and I could be in relationship with God. We would be free to respond clean, clear. So here we are today. I mean, we're blessed, aren't we? By a waiting Father who says, I love you, I forgive you, I'm so glad you're home. We're going to have a party. True story. Methodist minister serving an urban church. Saturday, he and his teenage son are going to take a walk down to one of the parks in the center of town. They get down there, they're about 15, 20 minutes away from home, and they start saying, if we could call in for one of those home delivery pizzas, it could be there about the time we're getting home. They've forgotten their cell phone, but there's a pay phone over in the corner of the park. They start walking there, and a homeless man comes up to them. And the homeless man says, hey, buddy, do you think you could spare a little change? And the dad reaches into his pocket, and he's got 2 handfuls of change, a lot of change. Go on, take what you need. And the man is so moved by his good fortune, he says, I'll take it all. So now he's got 2 nice handfuls of change, and about a few seconds go by, and all of a sudden the dad realized, we need to make a payphone call. So he calls the homeless man, hey, friend, look, we need to make a phone call here. Do you think you could spare some change? And the homeless man walks back over and opens up his hands. Says, here, take what you need. Oh, yeah. In the face of God's grace, we're all beggars. We're all homeless prodigals. So head home, expect nothing, and be astonished, though, when you hear the music and the banquet table is set, and God says, here, take what you need. Many people have said that what we're going to receive here in a few moments is our great welcome home feast. And a man named Richard Jensen put these two feasts, the feast of the prodigal and our feast together, may you hear it in a way that draws us and invites us to the table.
We recognize the prodigal son in this story. He acts the way we act.
He's all too familiar to all of us, but the son is not the only character in the story.
The story is also about a father and a brother.
Let us turn our attention to the father. It's clear, I think, that if we act as the prodigal acts, then the father acts as God acts.
The prodigal had the confession ready on his lips. I have sinned against heaven and against you.
Would the father hear?
Would he show mercy?
Would he be gracious?
Would he?
And how?
He hardly gave his son a chance to get those words out of his mouth.
The father saw him at a distance. He ran out and he said,
"Bring quickly the best robe. Put it on and put a ring on his finger and shoes on his feet.
Restore him to full sonship.
For he was dead.
And is alive again.
He was lost.
And he is found."
We have broken our vows of faithfulness to God so many, many times. The prodigal's prayer is on our lips.
But will God hear?
We've shattered our promises we've made to other people. The prodigal's prayer is on our lips.
But will God hear?
We've broken God's law of life again and again. The prodigal's prayer is on our lips.
Will God hear?
Will God hear?
Yes.
He hears with the words of these texts become his words addressed to you and to me, to each of us.
Bring quickly.
The best robe.
Bring quickly.
The ring.
Bring quickly.
Shoes for his feet.
Get your family clothes on today. You're my child.
You were dead.
Now you are alive.
You were lost.
Now you are found. Powerful words, these. Words of welcome and healing.
What I'd like for you to do now is to hear them again as you speak them to each other.
We're going to do something a little different. I need everybody to stand up as you are able, please. Folks on my right, if you'll face the center. Folks on my left, if you'll face the center. So you all be turning this way. You're going to be facing each other across the aisle. Folks on my left, you're going to begin as using the words of the prodigal. You're going to follow Julie. Folks on my right, you'll begin by following me. You'll be sharing the words of the Father, the words of God.
All right, prodigals, look at these folks across the aisle and repeat after me. I've sinned against heaven and before you. I am not worthy to be called God's child.
Now, folks on the right, look across the aisle and repeat these words of the Father. Bring quickly the best robe, and the ring, and the shoes. You were dead, and now you are alive. You were lost, now you are found.
All right, we're going to switch. On this side, you are going to be prodigals. And repeat after me as you look to this side. I've sinned against heaven and before you. I am not worthy to be called God's child.
And now this side, you will share the Father's words, God's words. Follow me. Bring quickly the best robe, and the ring, and the shoes. You were dead, now you are alive. You were lost, now you are found. You may be seated.
There's only one piece of a verse left in this story before we come to the older brother's role.
And the verse says, and they began to make merry.
In other words,
They had a party.
there was a celebration.
Is it any wonder?
A father had his son back.
That's celebrating time.
The God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ has you and me back too. That's celebrating time.
So let's celebrate.
Let's have a feast.
As a matter of fact, the festal table is set. Look, there is the bread.
So is the wine.
The table is set. You're all welcome to come.
In fact, you're dressed for the party.
Welcome to the table where God embraces us all as prodigals.
His words here are a little bit different than the words that we've heard in this text this morning.
The words are different, but the reality of the welcome is all the same.